It's a brand new year, and I've got players from a multitude of sports who could see their prices go up in 2023. Let's data dive. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Data Dive powered by Market Movers. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, and a very happy new year to all of you. Whether 2022 was one of your best years ever or maybe not as good, here's hoping that 2023 is the best one yet. And for card prices, well, let's just say it was a collector's paradise. We all know that prices were holistically down almost universally for all players. So I asked my team, as well as many of you on Instagram, which players you believe could be candidates to go up in 2023, and that's what we're going to cover today. As always, this video is brought to you by Market Movers, and our brand new version of Market Movers X mobile app is coming out very soon, very soon. We've completely overhauled the mobile app just like we did for the web a few months ago. Visit marketmoversapp.com and use promo code DIVE for your first 7 days free. You'll automatically get that new app when it's launched. Now let's get into the data. Okay, as always, before we get into this is not financial advice, this is speculation. These aren't even my picks this time around, and there's always differing opinions. We here at Sports Card Investor love collecting, and we also love trying to profit from the hobby we love and to make the right buys at the right time so that we can help fund the growth of our own collections. So let's get into this data. And I'm gonna start out with the big guy, with Jeff. I asked Jeff, give me some picks, give me some players, somebody that you think has some potential to go up in 2023. And the first thing he said is, in terms of short-term opportunity, identify the two quarterbacks who you think may make the Super Bowl. So he wasn't making that prediction, but if you have a strong hunch and you're looking at those players and you say, this guy's gonna make the Super Bowl, you could be looking at them. So I'm gonna show you here last year's Super Bowl quarterbacks. We've got Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford, a couple of their key cards. And I took this chart back to the beginning of December of 2021 and played it all the way out until now. So you can see that their prices definitely went up last year. There was a spike for both players, not quite as much as it looks like on the Topps Chrome Refractor for Stafford, but the real reason for that could be because there wasn't a sale in this price range at this absolute high point. You can see this is just Pop 74, so there was a sale here, and that's kind of in line with the rest of these cards. Now, if you trace this all the way forward to the present moment, Burrow essentially flat from the beginning of December of 2021 up until now. His prices are essentially flat, and he's actually come down quite a bit in the last few months. You can see this from being, up in this price range, now all the way down almost to neutral. Plus 16% on the Prism Silver, so still up a little bit, but some volatility like you'd expect with cards like this. And Stafford obviously being injured and having had a horrible season following that Super Bowl run, he's down even more. So if you think that you know who the Super Bowl quarterbacks are this year, now could be a time to get in before their prices really, really, really spike. I'm gonna throw a wild one out there and say, should we be looking at Tom Brady? Not for the long term, which we know should be a pretty good bet in terms of his greatness, but in the short term, is there a possibility, with Brady having had his best game of the season this last Sunday, that he could be on his way somehow to facing some combination of Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Brock Purdy, and Gardner Minshew in order to need to get to the Super Bowl again? It would be the craziest thing on earth after the way that they've played this year and their frankly terrible record compared to the rest of the conference. But if we jump over and look at the standings, that's what you're looking at. You've got, Hurts, who's in question to even be able to come back. I think they're expecting him to be able to play in the playoffs, but you never know. There could be a setback. Brock Purdy, you got Kirk Cousins, who in the big moments, we're still waiting for him to show up. My Michigan State Spartan quarterback, Kirk Cousins. And then obviously you've got Dak Prescott, who's pretty good, Daniel Jones, and Geno Smith. These aren't exactly the quarterbacks who put the fear of God in you, especially not if you are Tom Brady. So I'm just going to throw it out there as another quarterback. We'll see if Tom Brady has another run in him, especially after a big game this last weekend. The defense is pretty good for Tampa. Now, the other one Jeff said, top NBA stars headed for potential big playoff performances and deep runs into the playoffs. So let's jump over and let's look at some stats here first. And guys, these stats are absolutely mind-boggling. I talked about it a few weeks ago. I wrote an article in Basketball Card Fanatic magazine about this. We haven't really seen stats like this. And I know we're only, about a third of the way through a season, actually a little more than that now. But you've got Luka here at 34 points. If I scroll over, 9 assists, 9 rebounds. And this is where it's getting batty. It's not just the scoring, but all these guys are actually having these gaudy assist and rebound numbers. But look at this. 34, 34, 32, 31, 31, 30, 29, 29, 28 points per game, 27 points per game. All the way through the 12 spot, we've basically got guys averaging 27 or more per game. If I go back to a different era, let me scroll back to one of my favorite years. Let's go back to the 2003-2004 season. So now look at this. Tracy McGrady led the NBA at 28 points per game. 28. If I go down to the 12 spot, you're talking about Michael Redd at 21.7 points per game. This new scoring is absolutely incredible. I think obviously has to do a lot to do with rule changes over the years and different, defensive rules. But these players can just play absolutely out of their mind. It seems like every single night there's a guy scoring at least 40 points. So different kind of run here. What really matters too, though, is which ones are the most likely to make it deep into the playoffs and not get bounced right away, because we know their prices go down very quickly in that case. So I've pulled up some of those, front runner, top tier teams so far this season. And over the last 365 days of this list, only Jason Tatum is up, and he's up 6.6%. Now, it is kind of impressive, frankly, to see a player up over the last 365 days, because most are down, but you've got Jokic down 10%, Luka 21, Giannis 22, 22 for Ja, 27 for Zion, 34 for Donovan Mitchell, and 55% for Kevin Durant, my biggest L of 2022 in terms of cards that went down the most. Now, if I bump this in, I can go to the last 90 days, you start seeing some positive movement on guys, which is encouraging, especially in season, to see this. And then let's go to the last 30 days. Every one of these players is up in the last 30 days. We haven't seen green like this, life like this on players in over a year, for basketball, especially in season. It seems like all these players have just been on a free fall. Now, some of these aren't huge movements, but in a 30-day time frame, even just seeing 5.5% is pretty good. Let's go to 14 days. Again, you're starting to see movement on all these players. Now, Zach from my team, so I asked Zach, he said specifically he thinks Zion, the way he's playing, his scoring efficiency, his charisma, he's back. Hopefully, knock on wood, he stays healthy. And the Pelicans are a sneaky, sneaky good team. Zion's just undeniably fun to watch. You see a guy go out there and go 12 for 14 from the field with 29 points. It's something really to behold, and he's kind of one of a kind in that way. So he's particularly bullish on Zion and what he could do this year and years to come. And then you got to think about LeBron. And that's the other person that Jeff mentioned is LeBron. You know Jeff's a big LeBron collector and a big LeBron investor. I've pulled up a bunch of his cards. And I started out here, let's go back all the way to the beginning of our time back in 2019 and look at what a run LeBron cards have been on. This is the same chart that I've covered so many times in the past on videos, but it's always worth revisiting that these prices just go like crazy, right? His X Factor among these hasn't seen that kind of crazy volatility. Now let's zoom in and go, let's say, to the last 90 days. And a lot of these cards, a lot of LeBron's cards are down. He's going to pass. He's going to overtake the scoring title from Kareem. And when he does that, he's playing extremely well. Anthony Davis is hopefully expected to come back, at least for Laker fans and for card collectors of Anthony Davis. So LeBron is a guy to keep an eye on. His prices keep going down, but he's playing incredibly, incredibly well. He's challenging Father Time as much as Tom Brady has. So LeBron's the other pick that Jeff had. So those are Jeff's picks. Kind of, just more speculative in the near term, and something that ultimately you have to make up your decision with. Now, let's shift over to James, my director of technology, and he had kind of a sneaky one, and I liked this. He didn't go like some direction you'd think, some big name. He threw one out there that at first I was kind of really? But I started to look into it, and that's Dalton Varsho. Dalton Varsho, having played for the Arizona Diamondbacks and now moving to the Toronto Blue Jays, they've already got a very good hitting lineup, one that we know can do damage, especially when they're all clicking. Now, for Varsho, the combination of rule changes with the shift and the elimination of the shift, as well as a park change now to Toronto, and as well as to a new conference, and then kind of just the overall new opportunity, that might boost his prices. He's 26 years old. He's a lefty. He's a pull hitter. So again, the elimination of that shift could really benefit him. Now, if I look at his stats and I pull them up here, he only batted .235 last year. That's a big problem, but that's why getting rid of the shift, that could bring him up to .260. You never know. It's obviously really, really streaky for these guys. 27 home runs, though, 4.9 WAR. you're still kind of looking at that going, I don't know. I mean, 4.9 WAR, that's pretty good. That's like probably, 40th in the league or something like that. But, what could happen if this guy starts to click, and then where are his card prices? And that's where I jump over and you look at somebody like this, and his prices, I mean, they're really cheap. You're talking about his PSA 9 Sapphire Rookie Auto being $88. I mean, you have base Topps cards of players going for that price, right? So the entry point, if you think Varsho could have a decent year next year and get any kind of notoriety, this is the type of player I would look at on a site like COMC, right? You go out there, you scoop them up, you tuck them away and you don't relist them, and then you wait and see if he gets hot. And if you do, you relist him on there and get yourself a little COMC store credit. That can always be a fun way to do this. I mean, look at his gold, $10, $8. These are not expensive cards. So interesting pick, kind of a fun speculation play. Maybe you don't like Varsho. Maybe you're like, that guy's never going to amount to much in terms of the collector investor community. But that's how I like to think about those things sometimes. Now, some other players who could be positively impacted by the elimination of the shift. These are kind of ones that I think that could, see a boost. Joey Gallo is the first one that I think everybody comes to mind with. The notorious, it's like the entire team shifts over to one side of the field. He could really, really benefit. We know he's got power. And if they get rid of the shift, maybe he actually starts hitting for some singles and doubles. Jazz Chisholm is another guy that obviously a lot of times has the shift. And then two big hitters who already are the kind of players who will put the fear of God in you, and that's Freddie Freeman and Aaron Judge. Both of those guys often have the shift put on, and that could even further boost their numbers to gaudy levels, depending. Okay, so next up, an area that I don't know a lot about, and that is racing. Firstly, Formula One. I asked Adam, who heads up our social media team here, and he said that an interesting one is Logan Sargent in F1. He's the first American on the grid since 2015, and his 2022 Topps Now card was his only card in existence. We have that here in Market Movers. $43 for a PSA 10, and it's come down quite a bit since it started getting graded. His base card here, $15. Not a lot of movement, not a lot of change on this card. It's not a super popular one. He did have a 2022 Topps base card come out, and it's an F2 card, so it's kind of like an XRC or a Bowman Prospect type card. But he'll be racing for Williams this year, which does put him at a disadvantage based on the performance of the car. For reference, Williams drivers finished 19th and 20th in points last season. But if he's able to show some technical skill behind the wheel, there could be opportunities for him to get into a better performing car like George Russell when he raced for Williams and then moved over to Mercedes. So regardless of how he finishes this season, it could be exciting for Americans to have an American driver out there and competing for us. And it also means that there's another race in Las Vegas that could see him get a specific boost. Now, in terms of NASCAR, most of the racers in NASCAR tend to be pretty established, but there is a sneaky one, a kind of fun one who's gaining somewhat of a cult following, and that's Ross Chastain. He's out there making wild moves. You may have seen the video of him sort of riding along the wall to make a pass at the finish. He doesn't have any cards in Market Movers yet. If he starts making more movements and getting really popular, we may just have to add some. Let's shift gears over to baseball. Nicholas, my director of product marketing, he said look at two different things, bounce back candidates and future Hall of Famers. So let's start with the former. And here's some guys who just frankly didn't live up to expectations for various reasons last year. Some of them played, some of them were injured. All of the guys on this list, well, not so great. So you got Walker Buehler, Jonathan India, the Rookie of the Year a couple years ago, Juan Soto, Dustin May, who was injured, Luis Robert, who just didn't perform and seems to be often injured, Vladdy, who had a good year, but definitely not the MVP caliber season he had from 2 years ago, Fernando Tatis Jr. obviously injured and then suspended, Wander Franco, it was Wandermania back in February, March, April of this year, and then he just didn't really play as well this year and was out some of the time. DeGrom also wasn't able to play, and finally Kyle Lewis, not a guy I'm particularly high on. He is a little older, I think like 27 years old. He won Rookie of the Year in that shortened season back in 2020. But he is a guy who can hit for power and can do a lot of different things if he gets it going. So you look at a list like this and maybe one or two or more of these guys is somebody that you say their prices are down significantly enough that I think if they do have a bounce back, especially some of these top tier guys, they could see a nice price improvement. And then jumping over, thinking always ahead, who are the future Hall of Famers? This is particularly important in baseball more than any other sport, really. The baseball collector community really, really values Hall of Fame players. So once they get in, typically they have better price price holding long term. So some guys that come to mind between this year and the next couple of years: CC Sabathia, Scott Rowland, Todd Helton, A-Rod, obviously kind of a controversial one, but no doubt one of the greats. Joe Mauer, Andrew Jones, Ichiro, obviously for sure one of the greats, Billy Wagner, and Carlos Beltran, not without his scandal as well. But if you look at this list and there's any of these guys that you just want for your collection, you might want to get in now as opposed to waiting for their Hall of Fame induction, or just speculating in terms of when that announcement could be made. Some of these guys could be getting in there. So something to think about with future Hall of Famers, and I think that's a really smart, kind of conventional play, but definitely appreciated from Nicholas. Now, I want to shift over. Last from my team is Mark, and Mark talked about something that I've taken a little bit of heat for in the past, and that's Bowman speculation. And look, the bottom line is I don't know a lot about the prospect game. I don't follow the prospect leagues. I follow all the professional leagues and a lot of college sports. I just don't have time to try to dig into all the minor leagues for baseball. But he did say, Bowman speculation is something that a lot of people are into, and some of the bigger names this last year certainly made money, especially if you think about a guy like Jeremy Pena, whose prices went up a lot with his World Series MVP in that big run. Now, looking at this, these are just basically some of the top 15 prospects from the MLB Top 100. You got Ellie De La Cruz. You can't not have Jason Dominguez, even though he's not in the top 15. Anthony Volpe, Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Walker, Luciano. You got Marte, Grayson Rodriguez, Francisco Alvarez, Diego Cartaya, and Jordan Lawler. All these guys over the last 180 days, most, if not all of them, down, but check out the last 30 days, similar to basketball. Many of them starting to see some price movement upwards. So now people starting to get ready. We see this every year around January, especially into February. Baseball prices start to tick up. People are getting ready for spring training. If you're in the prospecting game, obviously you're going to be looking at some of these guys. Let me know down in the comments if you're particularly enthusiastic about one or two of them. Okay, I'm going to shift gears over here. One of our community members, affiliates, are very active in our Discord, and especially on the hockey channels, is Aaron from Lapper Cards, and he's over here on Lapper's hockey card flips on YouTube. He's also on Instagram here, so here are his accounts. And I said, give me a hockey guy that you are particularly enthusiastic about, and he said Cole Caulfield, and that was music to my ears because I ripped a random tin of Upper Deck Hockey earlier this year, and I pulled a Cole Caulfield Young Guns out of there. I still need to get that graded. Freshly turned 22 on January 2nd, so happy birthday, Cole Caulfield. And Aaron really likes him because he's already played very well at a young age early in his career. And he pointed out some of the other guys who are starting to emerge, who are coming on a little bit later. A lot of times in hockey, it takes these guys 3, 4, 5 years to really start to blossom. And Cole Caulfield already feels like he's a guy that's demonstrating that he can really score and do a lot of things early on. So last year, 43 points in 67 games. He's got 30 points so far this year in 37 games. Caulfield's a really exciting young player. Now, if I jump over and I look at his price movements, this is really interesting. I'm charting by percentage, right? So I've got 4 cards. I've got his PSA 10 and raw version of his regular Young Guns card, as well as his Canvas Young Guns. Some funny price things happening right at this juncture, starting back in September, where all of a sudden the Canvas raw and the PSA and the Young Guns raw went up, whereas the PSA 10s actually kind of stayed flat / went down. Not sure what really caused it, except that maybe there were more PSA 10s finally making it into circulation, and that could have been creating some price pressure. Maybe the multiplier was also so high that people were saying, oh, the gap with the grading costs coming down is making it more lucrative, so maybe I'm going to pick up some of those raws. I do not underestimate the effect on raw prices of the cost to grade and how that all plays out, because that can definitely happen with a lot of cards. Now, what's really interesting, if we go over to the current price chart, this bar chart here, and you see that his PSA 10 Young Guns here is $443, which is not quite double. It's almost $200 more, $150 more than his Canvas here in a PSA 10. But then the Canvas Raw is actually more expensive than the Young Guns Raw. I don't see that very often. That's kind of one of those things that when you start getting into the intelligence reports and price ratios, kind of makes you scratch your heads. Is there an opportunity there? So if you're into hockey, let me know what you think down in the comments of Cole Caulfield. Is he legit, or is Aaron missing the mark here? I hope he's really good. I need to get that card graded and see long-term what happens with Caulfield. Now, Last but not least, I want to jump over. I polled Instagram as well. I like to do that a lot. So I went to Instagram and I asked, and these were some of the players who showed up the most. And I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit here just to kind of show you the names. And Jason Tatum showed up a couple of times. Kyle Kuzma showed up. Dirk, obviously Hall of Fame. Yogi Berra, we had some vintage mentioned in there. Yogi Berra is kind of a fun one. Donovan Mitchell, what a ridiculous game. Donovan Mitchell, 71 points, 10 assists. I don't remember how many rebounds. But when you think about accounting for something like almost 95, 100 points of your total team's offense in a game, yes, it was an overtime game, but still, that was an absolutely insane performance. Shortly after the one that we saw from Jokic and from Luka had to be outdone. So Donovan Mitchell, he is a guy that I think if the Cavs make a run, he's going to be at the heart of that run. And he's kind of probably long been a bit slept on a little bit. I've never been totally sold. That game kind of changed my mind a little bit. Pete Alonso, obviously a guy who can hit for power. They're adding more power and offense to that lineup, and he's another guy that maybe could benefit from the shift. Halliburton, Luka, Jackie Robinson. Several people said Jackie Robinson, and he's a guy that I keep hearing his name since the National. I think people, as they're going back to vintage and nostalgia and important figures, they're really saying Jackie Robinson seems to have more potential, long-term to climb than some of these other players who are already established, like maybe Mickey Mantle right here. Joel Embiid, Michael Jordan, obviously his prices are always, good. I don't know if there's anything that'll specifically drive him up this year, but there were several votes for him. Trevor Lawrence, finally showing some signs of being a solid quarterback in the NFL. Shohei Ohtani and Deshaun Watson. Not sure if that was a serious one or not. He has not looked good at all this year. I've streamed defenses against the Browns over the last few weeks in fantasy for that reason. So that was what all of you said on Instagram, among a handful of other players. So certainly appreciate those comments as well. So what do you think? Are there any players that you agree could go up this year? Do you think anybody's going up? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with prices, but I'm optimistic, and we do often see at least these little short-term swings where speculation can be a lot of fun. Is there anyone we didn't mention who you think is a surefire bet? Let me know again down in the comments. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and if you want to get this data, visit marketmoversapp.com and use promo code DIVE to get the first 7 days free, and keep an eye out for that brand new app. It is awesome. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, happy investing, keep on collecting, and make sure to have fun.